All right. Hey everyone. Haven't done this in a while. You're thinking, well, what's this guy doing going live? It's not the pandemic anymore. That's kind of the last time I was doing this. So, um, I I wanted to go live and give a, let's say, a faith without fear, a different a different Christian's perspective on the Levy and Battleground public schools. There are some Christian perspectives on the Levy that I don't always agree with, and I thought, well, those voices are loud. I'm going to leverage whatever volume I have as a pastor to give a different perspective. So I want to start off by saying this is coming to you from 6A Church, where I'm the pastor. We as a church decided a long time ago that we wanted to be known for what we're for, as opposed to what we're against. So one of the things that we are for is we are for children. We are for the public schools. And you might be thinking, how can you be a Christian and be for the public schools? Well, that's what I hope to lay out here in this video. I hope I can make my case here. But we are for the schools. We're a church in town that is for schools. We are on Northwest First Street, right behind Music World, right across from Lane's Funeral Home. Northwest First and Northeast First and Clark, right here, 606. So we are in town. We're in the heart of the city, and I want to start by saying a few things. First, I'm not trying to tell you how to think or how to vote. And if you listen to people that are telling you how to think and how to vote, I I personally think that should be a red flag. You should pay attention to that. I also want to say I don't speak for all Christians or all pastors in town. I'm not trying to do that. It's not my place. It's not my job to do that. And personally, I don't think it's another pastor's job to do that for me or our church. And there are some pastors in the area that I actually want to distance myself from. I can't endorse their version of Christianity in any way, shape, or form, and I righteously despise that they're speaking in the name of Christ, because I think that does damage to our faith. As Christians, we believe that truth matters, don't we? We believe in something that is called absolute truth. The word truth means this is so, or it means this corresponds with reality. All right. So if we're going to talk about something from the vantage point of truth, then we need to talk about what's actually true. And there are some voices out there that are sharing what they claim to be the truth that doesn't really correspond to the reality that I've come to know when it comes to battleground public schools. So I want to share with you the truth that I know after working with the district, first as a volunteer, mostly as a volunteer, and also as the choir teacher at Battleground High School. So why do I feel compelled to do this? Well, uh, our church is 6:8 church, and that comes from the verse Micah 6:8, which says, He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you but to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. There are many loud voices who are speaking out against the district and the schools, and they claim to be doing it in the name of Christ. And they kind of paint this picture. They present this story as though their way is the Christian way. And there aren't very many loud voices out here that are speaking out in support of the schools. And so I've decided I'm going to leverage whatever platform I have, whatever loud voice, whatever loudness of voice I have, and I'm going to speak out in support of schools. So yes, you should know right out the gate that I'm in support of our schools here. Um, so I'm asking you, and I'm going to ask you bluntly, if you agree with what I'm saying, then consider sharing this video with as many people as you can. Not because I'm trying to make a name for myself. I wish, actually, I thought about uh, trying to hide my identity so that it wouldn't be about me. But then I thought, well, there would be the people that would say, well, he's he's too afraid to come out and admit that he supports the schools. He doesn't want anyone to know that he supports the schools. So here I am. This is me supporting the schools. I've got the courage, and if I get a little nervous, You've seen I've got my mug of milk here. I don't know if you can see in there. See if I can tip this without spilling it. I'm gonna drink a little bit first. See, it's milk. I love milk. My favorite beverage is milk. I love coffee too, but I've got acid reflux. So milk helps out with the acid reflux, and that's more than you wanted to know about me, I'm sure, as we get started here. Um, but share this. I'm not trying to make a name for myself, but the voices that are opposing the schools are loud. They're loud, and they have lots of channels to spread their misinformation around. And for some reason, there aren't a lot of channels that are spreading information about what's actually happening in the schools. I'm trying to help spread the truth, that which corresponds with reality, and this reality is based on what I have experienced firsthand in the schools. So, kind of a behind the scenes look, an eyewitness account, if you will, for what's happening in our schools. By the way, those are all my kids' pictures and drawings over the years back there. I call it my trophy case because that's what I'm most proud of are my kids. Um, but another thing, really quickly, but I know this is taking way too long of an intro, but I've done a lot of articles on my blog, davidlindner.net, about this. You can go read those, give you different ideas than you're going to hear on this video. I've also been doing a podcast with the school district for the last 4 years. We just did our 50th episode, and we also just did a bonus episode with Superintendent Shelley Witten, where we're talking about some of the misinformation that's out there on the levy. So go listen to that if you want to hear it from the horse's mouth. Not that I think Shelley is a horse. That's just a saying. Shelley's a great person, definitely not a horse. But go find the truth. Go to the source, right? That's what we're supposed to. If we really want to know what's true, then we get to the source, not all these other voices. And maybe if I can offer a little bit of pastoral encouragement here, maybe turn down some of those other voices for a little bit, and you'll see why I'm saying that here. Last introductory thought is at the end of this video, at the end of this live stream, I'm going to do a rapid fire FAQ about the levy. And I might take that out and edit it into a separate video if you want to share that. But if you don't want to listen to this whole thing about me, then just go jump to the end and see what I'm saying there. So my question to get us started is what kind of spirit is this that we're seeing in the name of Christ? I'm hoping to present a joyful Christian fact-based presentation about our schools, about our faith, and about what's going on. I've also got some water here. I promise it's water. But I'm a human. I'm actually a happier human than I used to be. I'm tired right now because I've overextended myself doing too much right now to help out in certain areas at the school. But I'm actually happier than I used to be. I grew up in a very conservative home. Grew up in Appalachia and Southeast Ohio, and my dad loved to listen to Rush Limbaugh and James Dobson. I don't know if you've ever listened to those guys, but I remember long drives listening to AM radio, and we were down in Southeast Ohio, way away from the AM radio stations. And so anytime you got near the power poles, it would interfere with the AM station. I don't know if you have that experience. Most of us don't because we listen to podcasts or something else now. But I remember we'd be listening and we get close to these power lines, and I'd get so irritated by the sounds. Like, can we get away from these power lines so at least the rage that we're hearing is clear? But everything on Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity and all these guys, it feels like a crisis, right? And they're always angry. They're always yelling, right? They're always getting worked up, and they're screaming about things, and they've got all this rage. And one day my wife finally said, you're kind of always angry. And I had to think about that for a second because I was angry and I was negative and I was pessimistic and cynical, and it wasn't really a righteous anger. I was actually mad at strangers that I've never met, mad at these people that I've never even encountered. Right? I wasn't just consuming information, and that's what we think. Well, I just like to listen to these guys. They're fun to listen to. They're entertaining, and there are some entertaining uh, far right podcasts out there that fun to listen to. The guys are funny, but Here's the truth is we're not just consuming information. We are actually being formed by the things that we're listening to. And we have to pay attention to that. So I didn't stop listening because I went, went far left. I mean, I grew up really conservative, and I haven't gone far left. I some of you might react to this term. I like to think of myself as a compassionate conservative, um, and conservative is such a loaded word anymore. Just like evangelical and Protestant, not like you can't say those words anymore. You can't even say Christian. I don't even call myself a Christian anymore. I call myself a Christ follower because the word Christian has been abused so much. Um, but I stopped because I was bitter. I didn't like being bitter, and I didn't really lose clarity on what the Bible teaches on what the truth of the gospel is. But I did notice something. It was a lot easier to be joyful and be at peace with the world when I wasn't listening to all of that stuff. So I'm not there. There's another video that's been being spread around. This isn't specifically a rebuttal to that video. I don't want to get into some kind of YouTube debate with these guys. It's not my interest, but it's a reflection, and it's a reflection about who we're becoming, right? So, assumptions are a big deal to me. I've had a lot of assumptions made about me as a pastor. People have assumed things about me that just aren't true. We've over the years we had people leave our church because they assumed I was a far right Christian nationalist. I'm not. I am not a far right Christian nationalist. We've had other people leave our church because they assumed that I was becoming progressive and I was becoming liberal, and I am not liberal. I'm trying to be truthful and stay true to what Scripture teaches, and apparently I'm both, depending on who you are in the week, right? Some people might think I am both. People might think I'm both at the same time, which I think honestly, as a pastor, is a pretty good place to be. Um, but here's the thing with polarization: when we're splitting and dividing on the far left and on the far right, is it stops asking questions, it stops looking for truth, it starts assigning motives to the other side, which aren't true. And schools have actually become, I feel, the victim in a lot of this. They've become the place where all this fear lands. And we've got these minors, these kids who are in these schools who have basically become tools for one side or the other. And so I think we need to stop making assumptions about what's happening in the schools. We actually need to get to the heart and the truth of what's happening in the schools. Now, for the last 4.5 years, I've been involved with the district at kind of an extreme level. I felt God open a door here, and I walked through that door. And it started with something called the Citizens Advisory Committee. I don't know if you've heard of that. If you haven't, you should consider joining next year. If you want to make a difference in our local school district, you should join when they send out the invitation. So I joined that 4.5 years ago. Was the fall of 2021, and then not long after that, I was listening to the things that were going on with the school. And I've done a lot of podcasts over the years, and I thought, well, hey, there's something I can do to help out. I could do a podcast and help build a bridge between the community that seems to have this idea about the schools and the district, because they're not lining up. And I thought, well, man, if we could just get the truth out there, then that would make a difference. And so I did that for several years while being full-time pastor. And then in 2023, or actually in 2022, 21 and 22, I started volunteering with the choir, and Darcy Schmidt, who's out there. Darcy, if you happen to be watching this, hey, how are you doing? So I helped out because my oldest daughter, was there in the choir, and I thought, well, I can do music. I can help out with the choir there, and I would go volunteer a couple days a week during Hannah's choir class, and then the opportunity came up to step into to teach the one choir class the next year, and so I did the stuff that I needed to do so that I could teach that class. And now we've got two choir classes, so now I've been teaching choir at the high school for the last couple of years. Um, but I also want you to know this: my oldest graduated from Battleground High School. My second oldest is a senior this year at Battleground High School. My third is a freshman this year at Battleground High School, and I've got one starting next year who'll be a freshman. So, so this isn't conjecture. What I'm sharing with you, this isn't stuff from hearsay. This is my lived experience from actually volunteering, getting involved in the schools to make a difference for the kingdom of God and show people how much God loves them. This is what I've experienced firsthand by being involved in the schools. So I also want to say this: supporting schools does not mean you're endorsing everything that the schools do. I've been very open about this. I've said this in my articles. There are things that happen in the schools that I disagree with. There are state laws that I disagree with. There are federal laws that I disagree with. Um, Supporting something doesn't mean you endorse everything about it, right? And that's been true from the very beginning of Christianity. Like, I really would like people to read their Bibles and really understand what's been happening since the beginning, right? Uh, Jesus was in a Roman Empire, and yet Jesus did not stand up and oppose the Roman Empire. He did oppose the religious leaders of the day, and he did that very boldly, and he did it with clarity, and he did a great job at that. But he did not stand up and oppose Pilate and everything that was going on with Rome, right? But he was present there. Jesus did his ministry. Yes, he was in Jerusalem and he was in Israel and Galilee and all these other places, but he was present there. He was doing his ministry in this place where it was occupied by oppressors. And that's what Christianity really has always been about from our beginning. It's been about a faithful presence. We as Christians have been present in some of the most difficult, dangerous, hard times over the years, right? That's what early Christians were known for, is that when all of the people left town and left the countries because of the plagues, it was the Christians who stayed behind and cared for the people and ended up dying at the hands of the plague because they were sacrificially loving their neighbor. And the reality is, this is a very important reality that I think we have to have all the way through. I'm trying to keep an eye on the time. Is that 85 to 95% or 85 to 90% of students in our area attend public schools. There are Christian schools in town, and if that's where you choose to send your kids, that's great. That's not an option for everyone. There's a lot of homeschoolers in our area, but not everyone can homeschool. It doesn't work for everyone, and the statistics don't lie. The truth is, 85 to 90% of children living in your neighborhood are attending public schools. And if we are going to love our neighbor, the majority of our neighbors are going to public schools. Matthew chapter 5, right in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, "You are the light of the world. A city located on a hill cannot be hidden. People don't light a lamp and put it under a basket, but up on a lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light, not your hatred, not your spite, not your anger, not your rage, let your light shine before people." What is the light? The light is the gospel of the glory of Jesus Christ. It is the hope of all humanity. Let your light shine before people so that they can see your good deeds and give glory to your Father in heaven. See, the thing, so many times we've confused that letting your light shine means that I actually have to go out there and I have to preach the gospel. And I have to preach against all the things that are happening. But Jesus said, your good deeds, that they can see your good deeds. And by seeing your good deeds, people outside the faith will give honor to your Father in heaven, right? That's what Jesus said. And if we're going to do that, like we actually have to go and do good deeds. We can't just shout anger and rage from the comfort of our own rooms. We actually have to go in and get in the mess. And sometimes it's messy. But we need to go and get in the mess, just like Jesus did. Jesus got in the mess. And let's talk about Jesus for another second, if you don't mind. I'm a pastor. I apologize, and if this is offending you, just skip past it. But Jesus said in Matthew 18, he said, "Whoever welcomes a child like this in my name welcomes me." And then very shortly after that, he said, "Let the children come to me and don't try to stop them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these." Children are not political props in our schemes that we are creating. They are a sacred responsibility. They are a treasure to be handled with care and with the love of God. And sometimes we need to kind of sacrifice ourselves for them, and we need to get somewhere where we are in the name of Christ loving people in a truly Christian way. And let's talk about neighbors for a second while we're there. Jesus said, Matthew 22 said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. You're supposed to love God with everything that you are, holding nothing back, sacrificing yourself for God. The second, Jesus said, the second greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself. All of the law and the prophets depend on these two commandments. Everything in scripture depends on these two commandments. And then Luke chapter 10, the parable of the Good Samaritan, verse 36 and 37 says, which of these three do you think became a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? And the expert in the religious law said, the one who showed mercy to him, because he couldn't mention the name of the one who showed mercy to him because it was a despised Samaritan. So this man that's hearing this story was heard a story where two out of the three people in the story were people that were on his side and agreed with him, and they actually did the wrong thing, and the guy that did the right thing was the guy that he hated. And then Jesus said, after he said the one who showed mercy to him, he said, uh, go and do the same. Jesus said, hey, go and act like the guy you hate. Go and act like the Samaritan. Go and love like that guy. As Christians, we're supposed to love our neighbors, right? And sometimes loving your neighbor costs something. It always has, honestly. Like loving your neighbor, truly loving your neighbor, it's sacrificial. Love is sacrifice. That's how we know what love is, because we've seen love in Jesus Christ, right? Um, so love is sacrificial, and love sacrifices itself for the betterment of others. That is what biblical love is. So now let's get into some of the specifics here, because you're probably sick of me preaching, and sorry, but that's kind of what I've been doing for a while, so it's hard to not do it. But let's get to the specifics here about the levy. So let's get some ideas here. First, let's talk about school boards. School boards are not these magic wands that can control everything, right? They don't control ideology. They cannot override state law. They cannot rewrite federal mandates. What boards actually do is they manage budgets, they manage staffing, they manage the facilities, they manage policy implementation. Um, we like to blame what we can see, and so we see the schools, and so we throw blame at the schools, but the school board actually doesn't have power to address most of the things that are being mentioned. Um, so we need to make sure we're handling things in the right way. And I also want to talk about this narrative problem, because the word narrative gets thrown around a lot. We kind of had a cultural shift when it came to the narrative. Remember I grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh, and heard Rush Limbaugh talk all the time about the left and controlling the narrative and all of that. But we actually went through a cultural shift, and President Trump, when he was elected in 2016, actually talked about controlling the narrative, and started using the same tactic that had been used against conservatives, and many's opinion, to against them. And the thing is, narratives aren't necessarily about the truth. They're just about controlling the story. And the real thing about narratives is they have footnotes. Like there's a lot of footnotes. What this actually means is, or what's behind all of this is, and reality doesn't really have footnotes. It's just what's true. This kind of the strategies, flood the zone mentality, flood the zone with all of this information, and even if it's not true, if we saturate it, then we win. And that's kind of what's been happening, in my opinion. The saturation has gotten to a level where there are a lot of people that believe things that aren't actually true, just because they're hearing it from so many people. And the truth is, when you hear a lot of people saying things, it's hard to disagree with that. especially when they're your friends. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 25, Paul says, therefore, having laid aside falsehood, each one of you should speak the truth with his neighbor, for we are members of one another. Laying aside falsehood, each of you should speak the truth with his neighbor, for we are members of one another. That's why, so like, shut down all this nonsense that we're listening to all the time. Actually, just go talk to your neighbor and let's talk about what's actually true. And the truth is, as Christians, we're not called to control the narratives. We're called to the truth. We're called to be a light, and we're called to things like love and compassion and mercy. Now, a real issue that's come up and that we need to talk about is inflation and tax fatigue. Since 2019, inflation has been 27%, and everyone feels it. I feel it, right? And our reality in Washington State is that we get a lot of taxes and fees imposed on us without a voice, which isn't really true because they are elected officials, but a lot of times people who oppose taxes don't really have a voice in our state because it leans pretty hard to the left. But there's a lot of frustration, and we are overtaxed. In my opinion, we are definitely overtaxed. We've got too much. And in fact, if you want to talk about numbers and taxes, um, right around, we're going to talk about McCleary in just a second, but I'm not sure I'm getting these numbers exactly right. But right before McCleary or all of that decision, the state budget, the percentage of the state budget that was dedicated to local public schools was about 52, 53%. And now it's down around 41 or something like that. I should have had those numbers, but I don't. Um, and the truth is, the levy is the one thing we feel like we can control, right? And it feels like, well, we're overtaxed, and we are overtaxed. We are 100% overtaxed, and I don't even know anyone on the left or the right that doesn't feel like we're overtaxed, and I don't understand it. Little rant here. I don't understand it, like how we can be so overtaxed and how they can still not have enough money to do the things that they're supposed to do. But that's not for me to decide because I'm not in there. I don't really know all the details. But so when people are talking about it from an inflation and tax fatigue standpoint, it's not greed, and they're just saying, I want to keep my money. I think there's an honest exhaustion, a tax fatigue exhaustion to it. But Jesus talks about this a little bit. He says in Matthew chapter 6, he says, don't worry, saying, what will we eat, or what will we drink, or what will we wear? For the pagans eagerly pursue all these things, and your heavenly Father knows that you need them. But above all, pursue his kingdom and righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. And that's a global overarching principle from the Sermon on the Mount that's supposed to guide and govern our entire lives. We're not supposed to worry and spend all of our effort worrying about money. We're actually supposed to trust God. And sometimes even worrying about money might mean that we need to sacrifice something for the benefit of others. So this levy, facts about the levy, it's a replacement levy. It's not a new levy. There's a fund gap that the state doesn't cover. And levies fund things like counselors, nurses, safety staff. Unfunded mandates are one of the things we talk about. Did you know that the state provides enough funding for our district to have 2 safety personnel? To have 2 safety personnel in a district that has 19 schools, and that covers an area of like 242 miles. So can you imagine those 2 safety people driving around and spending like 10 minutes per campus? That's what the state funds. And so the district is like, well, that ain't going to work. So we're going to have to find a way to pay for security and safety staff there. It funds things like mental health, and there is a mental health crisis among students. It's something that we as Christians, I think, need to get involved in as much as we can. It helps deal with class sizes, which went way up, as a result. Oh, my thing is telling me I only have 10%. That's going to be a problem because I need my notes. I'm going to turn the brightness down here, and hopefully that helps. I just charged it, so I don't know why it's using up so much energy. Anyway, so it funds extracurriculars. Did you know that athletics, the money that comes from the state for athletics is $0? Like not a penny comes from the state for any athletics. So sports are funded through levies, ticket sales, and fundraisers, right? So the revenue that comes in for the district, and this is I hope I'm saying the right numbers, is roughly 224 million. Our expenses are 239 million. It means there's a structural gap of 14 to 15 million dollars per year, just for the very basic necessities. And our enrollment is growing, even though most districts in the state, their enrollment is declining. Our enrollment is in Battleground is going up. I think we're one of two districts in the state that has a climbing enrollment, and costs don't pause in the district when votes fail. So it's not a new tax; it's a replacement levy. Um, did McCleary fix everything? No, it did not. Uh, it helped, or at least it's supposed to have helped, because it said that states are supposed to fully fund education, but they don't do that. Another example is that um, uh, transportation. There was a bill that just went through the state, whatever, the people that make all the decisions up in Olympia, that said that if you contract for things like busing, you have to offer the same benefits to that contracted company as you do to your actual employees in the district, which means that now we have to pay an additional $2 million as a district for the benefits. And wouldn't you know, that was a decision that was made, and the funding was not decided. And then, later down the road, they just decided recently, hey, we're actually not going to fund that. So that means unless somebody up in Olympia changes their mind, the district is going to have to pay for that $2 million, which is an unfunded mandate. It's a requirement that they have to do this thing. So private donations, could we have private donations? Yes. If you want to donate money to the school, that's great, but we don't have enough to cover the entire cost. And here's the other thing is that if we vote no against the levy, the problem is we actually, in the long run, will end up losing control of our district. So I'll get into some of that again later. Galatians chapter 5, and here's where I want to get is the fruit of the Spirit. Paul says the fruit of the Spirit is love. First one. Second one is joy. The third one is peace. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. But then he says, right before that, he says, the works of the flesh are obvious: sexual immorality, impurity, depravity, idolatry, sorcery, hostility, strife, jealousy, outbursts of anger, selfish rivalries, dissensions, factions, envy, drunkenness, carousing, and similar things. I'm warning you, as I've warned you before, that those who practice such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. And that's where we have to ask ourselves when we're listening to these sources that are supposedly doing things in the name of Christ, but are filled with things like fits of rage and anger and outbursts of anger and dissensions and division and factions and all of this stuff. Where is the Spirit coming from? Are these the people that we really want to be listening to? So Christianity isn't about who's winning or who won whatever thing it is we're trying to win. It's about the fruit, and it's the fruit of God growing inside us, the fruit of Christ, the Spirit of Christ growing inside of us to make us people who are loving like Christ loved us, and that's sacrificially, who are joyful. The fruit of the Spirit is joy. It's not outrage, right? The fruit of the Spirit is peace, and the biblical word for peace is shalom and wholeness, and God is working everything back into a state of peace and using Christians to do that in the kingdom of God. And yet there's so much division in the name of Christ, and it's really hard to understand. Which brings me to this idea of toxic empathy. Um, so the origin of this phrase emerged in the late 2010s. It's not a psychological term. It was popularized by Joe Rigney and Allie Beth Stuckey, and then kind of made its way through podcasts, like the Daily Wire and all of that stuff. Um, they're trying to create this idea that being empathetic is toxic, and in the sense that just being empathetic and caring and compassionate for people at all times and always is too far. Boundaries should exist, and yes, we have to pay attention. There's codependency. That's not a good thing, but the problem isn't empathy. That's not the problem. Matthew chapter 9, Jesus said, when he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them. That word compassion means walking with someone in their pain. Jesus had compassion for them because they were bewildered and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. There's another one. It says, when the Lord saw her, he had compassion for her and said to her, do not weep. Uh, with the son, that the woman that had the son who had died, and they're carrying him on the on the bier through town, and this woman was now a widow, he had compassion. His heart went out to her, and then he raised the guy from the dead. And they said, yeah, another one, Matthew 14:14, when he got out and saw the large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. Compassion is Christ likeness. Like, if we want to be like Christ, we need to be compassionate people. That's why I have no problem calling myself a compassionate conservative. You might have a problem with that, but empathy is not an endorsement of what's happening. It just means we understand the pain that someone is going through. Kindness is not surrendering to what someone is going through. It's just being kind. And compassion is not Marxism. And that's what a lot of people would like you to think. It just isn't. Compassion is not Marxism. It's Christ likeness. That's what Jesus did. And if I'm going to err on any side of things, I'm going to err on the side of compassion. So, misinformation, there's a lot of misinformation we talked about. It spreads through trusting relationships. Somebody hears something and spreads it to someone, and then repeating it makes it feel familiar, and that it kind of accelerates the belief. And then we hear this being spewed out in Facebook groups. I mean, if you want to have, if you can handle it, you should go read some of the comments about on the Levy post in the Facebook groups. And you see all this rage and this hatred and this spite and all this stuff coming out. And then where does that come from? Jesus actually tells us where it comes from. Matthew 12:34, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Another translation says, out of the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. So that stuff is coming from inside someone's heart. And if that is the condition of someone's heart, then we need to pay attention to that. So Christians, I think we need to slow down the rage and the spite, and we need to verify if this is actually true, and we need to refuse to pass along the fear, right? We should not be rage baiters. And so I know there are people way out there on the extremes aren't going to listen to anything I say, but I do think there are some people in the middle that are going to listen to me. Loud extremes don't decide outcomes like this. It's the people in the middle who are still thinking. The tired middle, the exhausted middle. And if you're thinking, well, I've got friends that are this way and friends are this way, I just don't know what to decide. This engagement is not neutral. It actually still has consequences, and it shapes things. And it shapes the world that we live in. Jesus said in Matthew 25, and the king will answer them, I tell you the truth, just as you did it for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did it for me. And that's kind of we've got this phrase, the least of these. That's who we've been called to. If you remember, James actually says that the religion that the Father accepts is to look out for widows and orphans in their need. And the whole command of Christianity hinges on this one thing that Jesus said in the upper room in John chapter 13, verse 34 and 35. It's the night before he's going to be crucified. And in the upper room, he's kind of giving the disciples his last lesson. And he says, I give you a new commandment, a new commandment to go with a new covenant that's going to be secured by his blood and his sacrifice on the cross. He's going to give a new command for that covenant. And he says, just as I have loved you, so also you must love one another. Everyone will know by this that you are my disciples if you love one another. The way we love one another is supposed to be like our whole witness and testimony in our light that shines. So I'm not trying to tell you how to vote. I'm telling you, let's pay attention to what we're listening to. And let's make sure that we're listening to the right voices, because we might not be listening to the right voices. We might just be listening to loud voices, fearful voices. I'm interested in the fruit of the kingdom of God, the fruit of the Spirit of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Maybe we just need to get back to that list for a while. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And I happen to be a Christian and a pastor in this town that believes that supporting our schools is a part of loving our neighbors well. 85 to 90% of students that live in your neighborhood go to a public school. And when we stand up and we yell against the schools and we scream against the schools and we're telling them we don't support the schools and we think all of this nonsense about the schools, we're not just telling them that we have feelings about the government. We're actually telling them that we have feelings about you and we think you are the problem. How do I know this? I know this because they've told me these things. I've had students tell me that they feel like their community doesn't love them. They feel like their community hates them. That they are a problem and they just look down upon them. And this is a problem. It's especially a problem if we're going to be like Christ. So I do think supporting the levy is okay if you're a Christian. I'm not going to tell you you have to vote for the levy. I don't have that position. I wouldn't tell the people in my church that they have to vote for the levy. I do think we need to think. We need to think clearly about what we're doing and make sure that we're doing something. If we're doing something in God's name, in Christ's name, in Jesus' name, that it actually represents Jesus well. And I'm just going to be honest. There's a lot of people doing stuff in Jesus' name that does not represent Jesus well. And I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want our church to be connected to that. It's one of the reasons why I'm doing this on the church page, because I want to make sure people understand our church is not like some of those churches. So I do hope you'll vote in the election. I hope you'll make the choice. I hope you get your ballot in early. There's talk about the incompetent government and go back to Friends, right? That darn post office can't get anything right. Well, actually, the postal system has some problems, and they actually told the district that if people wait until the 10th to get their ballot in the mail, there's a good chance it won't be counted. Because it might not get postmarked by the 10th. So if you want to get your vote counted, you need to get it in early, like by the 3rd, or you need to just take it to one of those red boxes, right? I think that's the best idea. Go put it in one of those boxes. So yes, please vote. Please consider supporting our students. Please show our students some love. And here's my last thing I want to say, and it's actually not about the levy. It's just volunteer and get involved in the schools. There is not a school in our district that will turn away volunteer help. They will not turn it away unless you're coming in with bad motives. If you're coming in to proselytize and to try to argue with students and all that stuff, don't volunteer. You just stay far, far away. Far, far away. You stay on your YouTube channels and all of that stuff. But if you want to come in and see some of the students, see some of the potential, volunteer. If you're worried about what the schools are teaching, come in and get cleared to volunteer and come in and listen to what some of the teachers are teaching. Let's see. There's so many things that I've talked about over the years that I don't know everything that I've talked about, but curriculum is one of the things that's important. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to jump into the rapid fire levy FAQ. The end of the pastoral part is gone. Right? That's over. Curriculum is one of the hot button topics, and there's this misnomer that there's a lot of and I don't have it in front of me. Maybe I've got it over here. That the SEL curriculum in our district is a Marxist curriculum, and it's not. It's not. There is no Marxist curriculum in our district. I've done a lot of talking about the curriculum. I've done an interview on the BG Cast about how curriculum gets adopted in our district, and it goes through a very long, thorough process. Sorry, I'm just trying to go through my notes over here, see if I can find this list, because I want you to hear the exact list. I'm just going to search for it. All right, so SEL, social emotional learning curriculum that our district has adopted comes from a place called Character Strong. And the character attributes, the virtues that they're teaching students are kindness, courage, respect, responsibility, perseverance, empathy, cooperation, creativity, honesty, and gratitude. Doesn't sound real Marxist to me. It actually sounds like there's actually a lot of Bible stuff in there if you're looking for it. Don't tell anyone I said that, but I think there's some biblical ideas in there because things like gratitude and kindness and perseverance are biblical. Um, It is not in the curriculum company's best interest to make a far left or a far right curriculum because they're trying to sell curriculum to as many districts and as many states as possible. So they tend to stay right in the middle because just like the rest of our country, they're all about profit and money and profiteering and making as much money as they possibly can. And so if they make a far right or a far left curriculum, then they're not going to sell to very many people. So the curriculums that our district has chosen are not Marxist and communist. They are not far left or far right. And if you have questions, you can actually go to the district office and you can read through the curriculum and you can ask your questions to people in the office, like ask Allison Tuhart, who's responsible for curriculum adoptions and all the things that she does. So it's just misinformation. It's just flat out lies. All right. So you ready for the rapid fire, the FAQ? Here we go. Straight answers. Just telling you the truth. Um, these are things I've heard over and over again. Is this a brand new tax? No, it is not a brand new tax. It's a replacement levy. It's not an additional levy. It replaces the existing levy that is expiring. So this is not adding more taxes. It's adding a percentage of new taxes because we keep putting it off and expenses keep going up. Did the McCleary Act fully fund schools? No, it did not. McCleary addressed parts of basic education, especially teacher pay, but it did not fully fund the schools. It does not eliminate the need for local levies. Initially, they had a cap on a local levy at being $1.50, and then they realized that that wasn't going to be enough for local schools to be able to support the needs of their students. So they increased that, I think, to $3. And so and our district actually made some really wise decisions about how they handled that time. Instead of jumping all the way up to the max that had been approved at that point in time, they kept it like at 250 or something like that, and they did about $1 of that money was going into capital expenses and capital projects so that they could keep the buildings operating well. It does not eliminate the need for local levies. In fact, 97% of school districts in Washington state rely on levies, and those that don't are either in a situation like us where the communities have voted no, or they have other funding, like they're on tribal lands, or they've got other federal funding that isn't available to most school districts. So it is still how 97% of districts in our state function. Is this double dipping since the state already taxes us for schools? No, it's not double dipping because the state funding is not adequate, right? State funding and local levies serve different purposes. State funding doesn't cover the full cost of operating schools at the levels communities expect. Thanks to those to the security and safety officers. So, um, is the district hiding money or being deceptive? No, they are not. They are not. They are not. I wish I could say that, and I could. That's one thing I wish I could scream because they can't. It is not possible for them to hide money. They've got 14 years of clean audits, and these are outside groups that come in and audit, and they have no control over what they decide to audit and look at. Um, Budgets and expenditures are public. You can go at any time and look at things that are being look at the money that's being spent in our district, and you can access our financials through OSPI and a site called fiscal.wa.gov. You can go see what the district is spending. Hitting money doesn't come with spreadsheets, public meetings, and slide decks. They're telling us how they spend all of their money, and you can go see all their presentations. Why don't we just cut administrators? I've heard that argument a lot. I wrote an article about that. Um, Administrative staffing in our district is much leaner than our surrounding districts. The two comparable districts, like if you're buying a house, you have to have comparables, and we have to have, if we're going to make comparisons to Battleground School District, we have to find similar districts, and those are Vancouver and Evergreen school districts. If you compare Battleground to those two districts, we are super duper lean when it comes to administrative costs. We have people in district office doing 4 jobs compared to other districts that have 4 different people doing those jobs. The rate of pay is substantially lower at Battleground compared to those other districts. We look at the amount they make and we think, man, they make so much money, and they do make a lot of money. But here's the thing: they carry a heavy load and responsibility for the district. and they work really, really, really hard, and they like, unlike teachers, they don't really get summers off. They work like normal people. They have full years. Um, so, and if we cut administrator pay, then we're going to end up with good administrators leaving the district to get better paying jobs elsewhere. Whereas if we're somewhat competitive with pay, then we can keep the good people here. And that's like, we want good administrators, right? We want good principals that are dealing with things like bullying and stuff like that in our schools. We don't want, the bottom of the rung administrator that just comes in and doesn't do anything, right? Um, but the heavier load our administrators carry, the more likely they are to burn out, and then we end up losing them. And then the less we pay, the greater likelihood that administrators are doing things they shouldn't be doing and cutting corners and doing all of that kind of stuff, which ends up with state oversight and lawsuits and all of that kind of stuff that end up costing a lot more money. So we can't just cut our administrators, and our admin cost is way lower than local districts. Why don't they just cut sports? Again, the states provide $0 for sports. So cutting sports isn't going to fix anything. It just removes access for students. It actually removes a huge part of our community spirit and our community pride, which I think would be really bad, because that's one of the things that I love about our town is you can drive down Main Street and you can see the signs up for Battleground High School and the Tigers and all of that. So that's good. Why don't we rely on private donations instead of taxes? Because it's a lot of money, and there aren't donors that are giving out that kind of money, right? Um, it's just a lot of money. Donations do happen and they matter and they're important, but we can't run this on charity alone. Private generosity supplements public responsibility, but it can't replace it. Teachers unions, are teachers unions stealing all the money? Teachers unions are funded by teacher dues. They are not funded by a line item in the district budget. And districts have to work with unions so that they can have teachers. So you can dislike unions all you want. I don't like teachers unions. Probably shouldn't be saying that on camera, uh, as a teacher, but I understand that. But teachers unions are the way things work. And if you have a problem with teachers unions, you should take that up at the state and federal level and try to deal with that at the state and federal level. The local district can't do anything about teachers unions. That's the reality we live in. Um, is the budget growing faster than inflation? A little bit. Since 2019, inflation is at about 27%. Budget growth is about, I think, 35, 36% in comparison to that. But there's also been cost of living increases and salary negotiations with teachers and getting, it's bigger numbers, like, that much of a change, between, I guess we're talking about 7 to 9%, depending on the numbers you're looking at. That doesn't mean there's bloat. And in fact, you're going to have a hard time finding bloat in our district budget. Uh, so why raise taxes right now when people are already struggling? There's actually a lot of reasons for that. Because waiting doesn't freeze costs. In fact, the more we wait, the more costs go up. It compounds them. There are things that they get more and more expensive over time. Delays often lead to higher future levies or deeper cuts later. So that's how the math works. And if we vote no, what actually happens if we keep voting no? Well, beside the obvious, which is cutting programs and staff and massive cuts to programs and staff and things that people love about the schools in our town will end up being cut. Um, it also sends us on a path towards higher state oversight if the failures continue, which will result in less local control, not more. And I feel like our district is kind of doing a lot to, and based on what I've seen and observed and participated in firsthand, our district does a lot more than some of the other school districts around us to listen to the community and hear what the concerns are of the community, and to make sure that they're addressing those and that they're working within those. If we lose our district oversight because we're absorbed by something like Vancouver district or Evergreen school district, then there's no voice left for Battleground anymore, right? There is no opportunity for us to speak into things because we're not going to have enough voices to counter the voices of Vancouver or Evergreen school districts. There's just too much population, and compared to the size of our town. So it's going to end up with a lot less local control, a lot less local ability to decide curriculums, a lot less local ability to make staffing decisions, and all of that. So there are actually some significant consequences when we think about voting no. Does supporting the levy mean endorsing everything the district does? It does not. You can vote to support the levy and not endorse everything that's happening in the schools. It's choosing to support students and be present in an imperfect system. And I really, again, hope you get involved. Volunteer, go get involved. See what's actually happening in the schools. And here's the thing, if schools actually had piles and piles of money sitting around that they were hiding from people, um, don't you think a lot of the broken stuff would be fixed? I mean, I love our district, but we got some schools that need some serious attention, and we can't pass a bond to deal with that because we can barely pass a levy, if we can even pass a levy. And it's like, well, can like if schools had piles and piles of money, I think it would be obvious somewhere, right? There wouldn't be broken stuff everywhere. So, uh, I'm sorry, just a little attempt at humor as I wrap this up. But that's the FAQ. That's the rapid fire. Um, I am here if you want to ask questions. I do teach two classes at the district. My role with the district has been largely volunteer, and there probably very few people in town that know as much as I know as a citizen, right? And I'm not saying that to brag. I've gotten pretty deeply involved in the school district. And if you have questions, then shoot me an email or hit me up somewhere on social media. I'd be happy to answer your questions. So at least if I can answer them, I don't know everything, but I would love to help you make this decision. So um, please feel free. Please consider sharing this video, sharing it with people. There's a lot more I could say, a lot more I could have said, but I really wanted to keep this under an hour, and it's 57 minutes right now. So I am going to sign off and call it good there. Maybe I'll have to do another video later. I hope not, but just for the sake of the future of our community, think about supporting the schools. Right? That's what we're investing in, and it feels like money is being taken away from, but you're really investing in the future of Battleground. Most people most people stay in town when they graduate, and a lot of the people in town went to Battleground High School. And if we really want to shape the future of this community, then I think we should consider supporting our public schools, our local schools. If you want to make a difference on some of these other major issues that you're concerned about, talk to your congressman, talk to people in the state office, do everything you can to influence the people that are making those decisions. I think that's a good thing too. Um, but don't just be one of those people that sits back and complains about everything and isn't willing to get involved and make a difference to change things for the better. That's one of the reasons I wanted to get involved. I wanted to see if I could make a difference. I want to see if I could change things for the better. And if we had enough volunteers in our town and in our district that did that, things would get pretty good. Things would really get pretty good in our schools. But thanks for taking the time to listen to this. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you soon.